Have you ever tried to imagine a rule book for our entire society? I don't just mean the big, famous laws. I'm talking about every single tiny regulation that dictates how literally everything works. It's this document so huge and dense it feels, well, completely impossible to get through.
Well, that rule book, it's real. It's called the Code of Federal Regulations, and you can think of it as the country's operating system. It's packed with thousands upon thousands of pages on everything you can imagine, from labor standards to, financial markets. And on the surface, these rules just seem incredibly abstract, right? Just a bunch of text on a page.
So, what happens when all that text crashes into real life? Because these aren't just ideas, they are the very tools people use to fight for their rights and just navigate their lives. Today, we're going to see exactly what happens when the fine print gets personal.
All right, let's dive into our first story. It really shows how this massive, intimidating rulebook can all boil down to a single, simple email. It's a story about what happens when work and health collide.
So here's the setup. It's January 2021, and a federal employee, Joanne Castana, finds out there was a COVID exposure in her office. Naturally, she's concerned for her health, so she requests sick leave to work from home for a bit. And her request, denied. Just like that. And that one denial, it kicks off a whole lawsuit alleging disability discrimination.
So, you're probably wondering, how on earth does a denied leave request become a federal case? Well, it all goes back to that rulebook we were talking about, specifically the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which is all laid out in Title 29 of the Federal Code. This is the law that's supposed to make sure federal employees with disabilities are protected from discrimination.
Now, for her to have a shot at winning, her case has to pass this specific three-part test. First, does the law even apply to her employer? In this case, yes. Second, does she have a disability that qualifies under the Act? And third, and this is the absolute key, did the employer deny her request because of that disability?
And this is where the real legal battle begins. The employer's argument was pretty straightforward. Hey, we were just following the rules. Her request didn't fit the official policy. But her claim was, no, that's just a cover story, a pretext. The real reason you denied me is because of discrimination. So you see, the whole case hinges not just on what happened, but on proving the why. Okay, let's switch gears to a completely different kind of fight. This one involving a consumer. In this case, we're going to see that sometimes the most important rules have nothing to do with the problem itself, but are all about where you're even allowed to argue your case.
So our second story starts with a number we can all relate to, the price of a new car. A customer buys a brand new Nissan Rogue, but pretty quickly they realize it has major problems. We're talking about a classic lemon law case, filed under state law to try and get their money back. But here's the puzzle. If it's a state lemon law case, why is it being argued in a federal court? This kind of thing happens all the time. And the reason? Well, you guessed it, it's buried in another section of that giant federal rulebook. The answer comes down to this key legal concept called the amount in controversy. Basically, for a federal court to hear a state case when the parties are from different states, the total amount of money at stake has to be more than $75,000. Now, at first glance, the car's price tag of about 51 grand, it's not even close, right?
But this is where the fine print gets really fun. Let's do the math. You start with the price of the car, sure, but the law allows for potential penalties of up to 2 times the actual damages. Then you tack on the attorney's fees, and boom, the total potential value just skyrockets, easily blowing past that $75,000 bar and landing the case squarely in federal court.
So, we've seen how these rules can define our rights and even decide where a case gets heard. Now let's pull the lens back a bit and look at the broader system that actually enforces all these rules, the legal maze in action.
Whether it's about a car or a job, almost every case goes on a similar journey. It kicks off with a formal complaint, then moves into a phase called discovery, which is where both sides dig up evidence. After that, it's a whirlwind of motions and arguments until finally a judge makes a decision.
And a really key player in this whole process is the Administrative Law Judge, or ALJ. And just check out what this quote reveals about their power. The judge isn't just rubber stamping a medical opinion. They're making their own interpretation of the evidence. They're the ones who weigh everything and make a call that can absolutely change a person's life.
The system also has to have a way to end things. It can't just go on forever. And that's where another super important rule comes in, res judica. It's a fancy Latin phrase that basically just means the thing has been decided. It prevents someone from suing over the exact same problem over and over again. You get one fair shot, and that's it. And this isn't just some abstract theory. We see this rule in action, right here in the Doria case. The plaintiff's claims got tossed out of federal court for one simple reason. The issue had already been decided in state court. The rule of res judicata was applied, and the case was closed for good. It's the system's way of saying, okay, we're done here.
So, after diving deep into these individual stories and all these procedural rules, what's the big picture? Why does all this dense, complicated fine print actually matter in our lives?
Well, here's the thing to remember. All of this complexity isn't just random. It's a system that's been built up over centuries to try and create a predictable, orderly way to solve our problems and define our rights. These rules, from the Rehabilitation Act to the amount in controversy, they are the essential architecture, the scaffolding for a society that's supposed to be based on the rule of law.
And that leaves us with one last big thought. We've seen that these incredibly intricate rules can offer a path to justice, but their very complexity can also create massive barriers, making the system super difficult and expensive to use. So here's the question. Is all this complexity a necessary feature for making things fair, or is it actually a bug that keeps justice just out of reach for some people? Definitely something to think about.